Hello, and welcome to the Joyful Living Podcast. I'm your host, Kimberly Dixon. The purpose of the Joyful Living Podcast is to share stories of hope, inspiration, and triumph. The world we live in today sometimes can be a really dark place, and these stories are meant to inspire you and to tell you, let you know that other people share a similar story as you, and that they were able to triumph over their challenges, and you can too. If you're watching today on YouTube, please make sure to hit the subscribe button and like the video. If you're listening on any other podcast platforms, please subscribe to it as well so that you can get notifications when our next episodes come out. Tonight, we have a guest on that I actually met online just a few weeks ago. Shelda Askew is going to be sharing her story with us. Shelda, tell everyone about your story.
Sure. Hey, peers. My name is Shelda. I'm originally from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I now reside in North Carolina. I'm a mother of 3 and hoping one day to be a grandmother. I have overcame many obstacles with substance abuse, and I now presently run a company called SFK Caring for Life, what offers support and mentorship to those who has been challenged with mental illness as well as substance abuse. And because of my dysfunctions and my challenges, that's how I have developed my company.
Okay. Well, congratulations on your recovery from your abuse. How many years have you been in recovery?
I've been in recovery for 23 years up to date.
Oh, congratulations.
And still continuing on. Hip, hip, hooray.
Amen.
Yes,
hip, hip, hooray.
Yes.
So, what made you want to try drugs in the beginning?
Well, first, Kim, it was mostly for recreation.
Okay.
I can honestly say that's what I got introduced under a recreational
So something
concept.
just for fun.
Something just for fun. But as I gradually, I continued to do it, it spiraled into a self-medication.
Okay.
Because it was my go-to in my times of depression, because I also have a dual diagnosis with mental illness for manic depression as well as substance abuse.
Okay.
So it was my go-to for my medication.
So do you remember what your first experience with drugs was? Or?
And when you say first experience, are you...
do you remember the first time you tried using drugs?
Yes, I do. I was little over 18.
Okay.
And I tried it again for recreation, but again, it was my go-to, my comfort. So I continued to try it years later.
Okay. So it was just recreation. Was that something that you were just doing every now and again with your friends, or okay?
Now and again with my friends, but it started being my go-to. So it started being a constant fix for me, and it suppressed a lot of other issues that was going on. And through my road to my recovery, I realized the purpose of why I started doing drugs, because there's always a reason. I can sit here and say it was recreational, and that was my intentions to start it off as a recreational activity, but it spiraled into something more.
Okay.
And then it was my go-to for my healing. And that's because of a lot of issues I was challenged with, coming from dysfunction, coming from suppressing a lot of issues that I've had previously in my past. But until you start the journey of recovery, that's when you realize that it's not safe to say it was recreational.
Okay.
I have to be transparent and say that it was to suppress a lot of other issues, and one was mental illness.
Okay. So at what point did you realize that this wasn't something that you were doing recreation, that you did need some support in kicking the habit or getting clean?
When I start deteriorating, mentally, physically, emotionally, where I start deteriorating into a person that I didn't know anymore. When I start depending on it versus wanting it, I started realizing that I probably needed it, but which was false pretenses, because I don't think now, as I'm in recovery, if I needed it then, but that's how you feel when you're going through it.
Yeah.
So when I start sacrificing bill money neglecting my children and things of that nature, that's when I realized that it was a problem.
That leads me to my next question. How did your addiction impact your relationships with your family and others?
It impacted a lot. I used to make myself believe that it wasn't impacting anything because I was building myself on false hope that it was okay to, my drug of choice, by the way, was crack cocaine. And I made myself believe it was okay and I was okay with doing it. You know, I didn't look at myself as a normal person crackhead because I didn't sell this or sell that. I waited till I got paid. But when I got paid, I spent all my money.
Okay.
So, you know, there's no deficit of what a person who smoked crack look like. I just know that I sacrificed a lot of things I could have done with my family for that drug.
Yeah.
So I was just as I'm dependent on it as the next person.
You raised a really valid point there that someone who uses drugs doesn't look like what gets portrayed on television.
Oh yeah.
And I find that oftentimes that's what people are looking for, and that's what they associate with it. But that's not what it looks like at all.
I agree. Drugs is not prejudice. First and foremost, I have gotten high, you know, and again, I'm a person who's very transparent. Ask me no questions, I tell you no lie. You know, so I have gotten high with doctors, lawyers, you know, people from less fortunate home fronts, you know, so there's no picture of what a person who does drugs look like. You know, and Lord knows, I'm so glad I don't look like what I've been through.
You definitely don't.
You know, yeah. So, you know, it's just the grace of God, and which was my pathway to my recovery. I must admit to that, where I had a praying grandma who have helped me overcome many obstacles with prayer.
Yeah.
And I still have that journey, but there's many pathways to people's recovery, but it's so person-centered. But mine was Lord Savior Jesus Christ.
Okay. And you mentioned something that was very important there. You got high with doctors and lawyers and people from all walks of life, because addiction does not discriminate.
Exactly.
And no matter what social status you have, I just messed that all up, y'all, but you know what I mean.
Right.
No matter what group you come from or what station, quote unquote, you have in life, we can all come from dysfunctional families.
Exactly.
We can all have a mental illness diagnosis. We can all be dealing with some kind of trauma from childhood that nobody else knows about, and we're using drugs to self-medicate. Or we can be so stressed out with family life, drug, work, or any other number of things that we're looking for something that will help us get through the day. And before we know it, we are on this downward spiral.
Yeah. And I tell everybody, you're only one trauma away from a downgrade.
That's powerful.
Yeah, so you know, that's why it's cool not to judge anything or anyone, and that's why I always take advantage of using this platform to spread the message that you know it's a long journey, because a lot of people is embarrassed to admit to their dysfunctions or their downfalls, you know, but I'm here just to let people know that keep hope alive, because you're not alone.
We're definitely not alone, and you're definitely right that we're only one trauma away, because we never know what that incident or trauma or whatever that one
trigger
straw that breaks the camel's back, that make you do what my pastor tells us all the time: never say what you won't do. So, because even Scripture tells us that the heart is the most wicked thing of all.
Exactly. In the mind.
You're right. It's like, so that don't say what you won't do, because we're all just one trauma away.
Exactly. Yeah.
So did you ever feel embarrassment or about your drug use or anything?
All the time. And it took self-worth, and it took meditation and therapy as well as prayer to overcome that, because no one wants to be a menace to society, and that's what the stigma is. A person. That's why a lot of people don't want to come out in the front and be as transparent and authentic as you hear me saying now. But it worked for me. So yes, I was very embarrassed at one point of what people will think, but that was mostly where my illness and my depression was coming from, because I was so caring about what the next person think instead of what was beneficial to me.
Authors in art, I promise you, is not anything that you've ever experienced. Don't get it confused with those other art places. You want to get in here and experience something that you've never experienced before. Most importantly, you want to make sure that your creative wellness is satisfied at Authors in Art.
Beneficial to me.
Okay.
So when I stepped out my shell with prayer, that is, and I start realizing that I too deserve opportunity to live my best life. So I start speaking out, and I learned that when I start speaking and sharing, because my story had power, everyone's story had power.
That's true.
Where
That's
it can
true.
benefit someone, somewhere, if it's just one person. So I start speaking out, and that's what made me want to start my company, which is SFK Caring for Life, where I offer peer support services, because we instill hope in people by our stories and our lived experience, and it gives me a platform to go ahead and continue to keep my journey and my hope alive.
Well, we truly thank you for that service, because we need that.
Exactly.
Because there are people out here dealing with things that are unimaginable.
Exactly.
And we need to have agencies such as yours that are going to support people in their journeys, because everybody's life is simply a journey.
Exactly.
Your journey may not look like my journey, but I've had one heck of a journey too.
Exactly.
And we can all support each other along our path.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So, can you talk to us just a minute though about the dual relationship between mental illness and drug use, or drug use and mental illness, and how those work together?
Yeah, I'm just prior to what I said, dual diagnosis is real, you know, because a lot of people, and such as myself, and I only can speak for myself, use drugs for self-medication, you know, self-medicate yourself, because I was not aware that I was considered a person with manic depression.
Really?
And, yeah, because I thought that was my normal. And in my culture, and I don't know about yours, but my culture, mental illness was a taboo. You know, so we didn't speak about our mental illness in my home. And if I look back on my past, I'm safe to say that it comes from, you know, my generation. If I look back on certain people in my family who has had mental illness, but we didn't speak about that.
Right.
So I thought that was my normal, that was my worldview, until someone changed my opinion, where I got introduced to a therapist who diagnosed me, and I did not want to admit to it, but yeah, it's safe to say that I do have a mental illness of depression. And I didn't self-medicate myself. So a lot of people misinterpret some people who is on drugs, who they're just weak, or they just don't care about life, or blah, 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 or whatever. But there's a reason behind a person wanting to get high or take drugs. You know, it can be something totally different going on, such as a mental illness. So I can suggest for everyone who is challenged with a mental illness or substance abuse to get the proper diagnosis, because there is definitely help out there.
And getting a proper diagnosis is so very important, because like your family, my family didn't really talk about mental illness, and you would have people, well, such and such is just special.
Exactly.
They're different, but nobody really ever said anything, or they never got a diagnosis.
So they didn't know.
Yeah, because my mother cares for one of her younger sisters. And when my mother took over her carers when she was finally diagnosed, because back in when my grandmother was raising her, it was just like they just special.
Yeah.
They different.
Exactly.
But they never got an official diagnosis, so they never really knew how to really help them.
Exactly.
And the other thing about that is a lot of mental illness has a genetic component. So it may skip a generation, but it may be generation after generation after generation.
Exactly.
So we really need to know what's going on in our family. That's just as important as knowing if you have somebody that's had colon cancer or breast cancer. We need to share these things so that we can be on the lookout for it, because some of it develops between a certain age.
Exactly. Yeah.
So yes, thank you for bringing that dual diagnosis into
exactly.
perspective, because again, you see somebody who's using drugs and you automatically just form these perceptions of them that could be so far from the truth. But when we start to really find out people's stories, then we can provide them with some hope and we can provide them with some help.
Exactly.
So tell us a little bit more about what your organization does.
Well, in the state of North Carolina, I am a certified peer support specialist trainer. What we do is offer the 40-hour training for those who want to become a peer support specialist. And a peer support specialist is a person just like me, just like you, who have been struggling in the course of their life with a mental illness or a substance abuse, who is now in recovery, who basically just want to give back, who want to become a peer to someone, to instill hope, to be a person's bridge to recovery. Because what we have learned through studies and evidence-based, that no one can help a person who has walked in their shoes.
Right.
So with the mental health care, we offer the peer support specialist, who is basically a person who have lived experience, who has walked in their shoes, who can walk the journey, because the journey to recovery can be very lonely.
So you really need somebody who's on that journey. So
journey.
You can walk with them on that path with them, and not like, you do this, you do that.
Yeah.
But being that you're on the path with them, you like, let's do this together.
Exactly. So we offer that, and to become a peer support specialist, you have to have the 40-hour training. So SFK Caring, which is my company, which, because I am in recovery and I speak so highly of recovery, I decided to make it my mission and start my own company, where we offer the peer support training, the wellness training, CPR training, a variety of training.
Okay.
And it's all towards wellness, health and wellness.
So, a lot of times when we're talking about addiction and stuff, people say, and I'm asking you because I do not know.
Okay.
I am not an expert in that area. People say that you have to hit rock bottom before you realize that you need some help. Did you hit a rock bottom?
I did, and that's a true statement to some.
Okay.
Some is fortunate than others where they didn't have to hit rock bottom, but it's person-centered. Every person is different, but me personally, yes, I had to hit a point where I got sick and tired of being sick and tired, and I ended up in prison. That was my rock bottom. My rock bottom is that I was living to get high and getting high to live. And so until my higher power decided to put me up against the wall and say, enough is enough, Shelda. And when I got behind the prison walls, I said, Lord, enough is enough. And I promise that if you can transition me into the person that you desire me to be and let me focus on my purpose, then I promise you that I'm going to help you with that mission.
That's
so
amazing.
I said, Lord, I'm just your vessel. You go ahead and do what you need to do with me, but can you please assist me with getting here out of prison? And when he did that, I said, I'm all yours.
It's amazing.
I'm just here.
What happens in our lives when we relinquish the will.
Exactly.
Because we have this concept, we live in a world where we all treasure control, but when we realize we really have no control over this world and we relinquish control, that's when things will really start to fall into place and we can walk in our purpose.
Exactly. And stay humble.
And stay humble.
I stay humble, because this is all his will and my testimony. But he has put me through tests, and the road has not been easy, but it's a road that I will always continue to travel, because I love recovery. And I love walking it with my higher power, which is my pathway to my recovery.
Right. Because again, you said different people are going to have different pathways, and if they didn't have a praying grandmother, then at this stage in their life, it may be a little hard to reach them with that.
Exactly.
So you're right. Everybody's going to have a different power, but I'm so glad that you were able to reach yours. Now, once you discovered your purpose, did you start to walk in that immediately?
No. Not at all. I was still defiant, because again, when I went through, I should say, and most people I know who has been in the addiction world, you have to refocus your worldview. So I had to have people instill in me that you have a purpose, and someone who trusted, believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. That's why peer support is so important, because we continue to encourage. Because when you're going through transition, me personally, no, it took me a while to really meditate on what is my purpose. I know I felt it, I know I wanted it, but I was not built with the tools to do it. So I had to recondition and find a whole new worldview on how to focus on my purpose. But with prayer, in my case, my pathways was my higher power, and having a peer who believed in me, I start reevaluating, what I really wanted to do. But my only stop was myself. So as long as I start knowing,
that's most of my problems. Like if we would
yeah.
just get out of the way of ourselves,
yeah,
we could do things a whole lot quicker and a whole lot easier. But our road is usually the stony, rocky one, because we won't listen and do right.
Exactly. Yeah, and then when you've been through so many tramps and turmoils, you have to. If I say, Lord, you got to pinch yourself. You really want me to do this? So I felt like David a lot in the Bible. So, but here I am.
So I remember when I was in my 20s, when God first told me that I was going to be a teacher.
Okay.
It was very clear, because he was like, you're not a preacher, you are a teacher.
Exactly.
And my response was, not me.
Okay.
Lord, you don't know me.
Exactly, right. You
but
don't know
I think all of us, not all of us, but a lot of us struggle with that, because it's like, you don't know who you're asking to do.
Exactly.
Like, and we know that He knows, but I think it's more of the people.
The human,
The human people.
Would think.
It's like they're not going to be behind this. God, I'm going to need you to pick out another job for me.
Exactly.
It's like, I get on board with something else, but that I'm not doing.
Yes, definitely.
But it's amazing, though. It's like, because when you try to defy your purpose, it will just keep
grabbing at you.
It won't let go of you.
Exactly.
Until eventually you relinquish your control, and hopefully, nothing happens where you don't get to walk in your purpose.
Exactly.
But I'm so glad that you were able to realize what your purpose was and began to walk in that, because your agency is something that is deeply needed now, because people think, you don't see addiction that is not happening, but it could be very well a person sitting next to you at work, because it could be any substance.
Like. Exactly.
Yeah.
And we're so good these days of hiding things and staying secretive with fear of being misunderstood or misdiagnosed, or there's no help, or being judged. So that's what SFK Caring is here to let the people know that, hey, we care.
Okay.
We're here. We instill hope. We know the journey is a lonely journey, and it's a scary journey too. But that's what peer support represents. That a unity basically in the community.
Well, thank you for being willing to share your story here tonight, because this is the whole purpose of the Joyful Living podcast, is to share these stories so that people realize they are not alone in their journey. And like, we have done some things and things that nobody knows about, but we want to share stories on this channel so that people know it's not just you, it's not just me. And if she made it, if I made it, then you can make it too.
Oh, yes.
And we're here to support you. So, Shelda, do you have any trainings coming up with SFK?
I do. If the audience want to take time to look on my website, they can register for any trainings. I have a whole lot of them coming up. But my website is SFK Caring for Life, and that's the number 4, caringforlife.com. And we also offer a peer share support group for those who has graduated from the trainings, where they're looking for jobs or looking for support with other peers, and that's called Peer Share, and that's on Facebook. Okay. And I also offer an online support group, which will be launching soon.
You're a busy woman.
Yeah, I'm trying to get the word out there now and keep hope alive.
Well, we appreciate you because we
Yes.
need a little bit of that hope in the darkness that we see so many things on the news today and so much there's turmoil in our world that it's easy to feel hopeless. But
Yes.
we are thankful that there are people out here like you who are providing us with
Thank
hope.
you.
So thank you so
Yes.
much for sharing your
Yes.
story with us
You're
today.
welcome. Come anytime.
So again, guys, thank you for watching the Joyful Living Podcast. I'm your host, Kimberly Dixon. Again, if you're watching on YouTube, be sure to subscribe to the channel and like the video. If you're listening on one of the podcast platforms, subscribe there as well so that you can get a notification each week, Wednesday, when we post a new podcast at 5 p.m. Guys, thank you for watching so much. We love you.